Okay, and here we are. So, you're joining me, Jeremy Hughes, host of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, on another wonderful speaker series we have going on today with the Turtle Hospital. And before we get into a bit of introduction about our speaker today, I'd like to introduce our classrooms that we have joining us. We'll start with Ms. Erickson's classroom, coming in from Madison, Wisconsin. You guys can unmute the mic and make some noise. Awesome! I love the enthusiasm. And if you could just mute your mic again. So then we have next Miss Pandola's class. You could unmute your mic. And they're coming in from Austin, Texas. Grade 1's from Austin, Texas. It's Pandola's class. If you could unmute your mic and make some noise and throw your hands in the air. Awesome. I love the enthusiasm, guys. Thanks for joining us today. And Miss Brecka's class could unmute their mic and give us some noise and waves. Miss Brecka's class, the grade 4s, joining us from Ontario. I like the hands, guys. Awesome. Thanks so much. Great. And Miss Brecka, if you can mic it then, perfect. Miss Owen's class, last but not least, if you could unmute your mic. You guys are joining us, grade 2s from Barrie, Ontario. A little bit more local. Awesome. I love all the excitement, guys. Oh, and look at that. We have Mr. Vasquez joining us just in time. We're just about to start without you, Mr. Vasquez. Can you hear and see me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. If you guys can make some noise, your class is last but not least for sure. You guys want to make some noise and shout and put your hands in the air?
Hands in the air.
You guys are just waking up to the hands. So we're just about to start. So I'll give you a quick introduction about a recurring guest that we have. Teresa Ryan at the Turtle Hospital has been working with sea turtles for over a decade. That's a long time for some of you guys. So she's joining us from the 40 today. As you can see, the turtles in the tanks there intermittently splashed in the video. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa to tell you a little bit more.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are in the Florida Keys. So it's the string of islands down at the very base of Florida, which is kind of nice because it stays pretty warm down here all year round, which is why the turtles like it so much. Because sea turtles are reptiles. They're cold-blooded. They get their body temperature based off of the water temperature. So they like it when it's warm. So even this time of year where most of the rest of the country is cold and getting snow, high today is 80 degrees. So really happy for the turtles. So we'll start off with Dusenberry. This is our newest turtle. She just came in over the weekend. She was found floating. And so floating in the wild is not normal. Because in a perfectly healthy turtle, the only time they're ever up at the surface is to breathe. But they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So when they are stuck up at the top, they really are stuck. And so she was found by Fish and Wildlife. So they called us, they brought her in, and we do have our rehab staff on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like a real hospital. We even have a turtle ambulance. So all they have to do is that boater gets that turtle to land, and then we'll go meet them on land. And that's how we got Dusenberry here. It's a little bit, just around 100 pounds, and she's a loggerhead sea turtle. And so the loggerheads get their name because they have a very large head. So in the olden days, when the ships used to come through the old shipping channels, they'd see these turtles come up for air, and they'd say, "Log ahead!" because it looked like a log bobbing up to the surface. And the name kind of stuck. But she was found floating, so that's how we knew that something was wrong. So when we brought her in, we did some x-rays. She has what we call an impaction. She's got a blockage in her intestines. Basically, she's constipated. She's all blocked up, she can't poop. And so we're giving her medications to help her poop and get rid of all of that gas. So it's going to take about 2 to 3 months on average for these turtles to kind of stop floating and be able to be released. But we're also kind of trying to help her out a little bit because she's floating kind of sideways. Because their intestines loop around like ours do. So depending on where that blockage is, where that gas is within their intestines, kind of depends on how they float. So sometimes they float kind of sideways, sometimes they float the other way, sometimes they float butt up. So it's not very comfortable to float sideways. So we have Velcro. Those are the 2 white strips down each side of her shell. So this way we can kind of Velcro some foam blocks to her sides and kind of level her out a little bit. Just like for little kids, when they go swimming, sometimes they get little floaties. Well, same concept. And the Velcro is nice because as she starts kind of moving around her tank and that impaction starts moving through her system, then she's going to start floating different directions, and the Velcro allows us to just move those foam blocks around. But she's doing pretty good. It's only been a few days, so she's still trying to get used to us and used to everything. She's still got some food on the bottom of her tank she hasn't eaten yet. But she'll start getting more of an appetite as she starts feeling better. Think about you when you get sick. You get kind of weak and tired and you sleep a lot, don't really have much of an appetite. Same thing for the turtles. And then once they start feeling better, that's when they start getting more active and start getting hungrier, which is always a good sign. Okay, so that's Duesenberry. One of our other newer turtles is Jovanovic. So he came in last Thursday. She was found entangled in some crab traps. They were entangled on her right front flipper. So her flipper's all swollen. Doesn't look real pretty. But she also has some older damage to the back end of her shell. It's from a boat. Typically it's the propellers that will make those kind of slicing motions. So she's already survived one problem, but she now has another problem she has to deal with. But we're working on getting the swelling of her flipper down. She's on some different medications, and we're massaging the flipper, doing some physical therapy with it and some laser therapy. And we have also started doing leech therapy, which kind of sounds gross, but it's very helpful in these cases where the flipper is very, very swollen. So you need to be able to get the blood and get the fluid out in order to let the other therapies work a little bit better. And so we'll be doing that over the next few weeks. But the good news is that even as bad as that flipper looks, it's still likely to be saved because she still has movement through it. She can still move it. She's using it a lot more than we were actually really expecting her to. And that's all good signs. Because the other problem with a severe entanglement like that is if it has been on for too long and has caused too much damage to the flipper, then the flipper will start to die. It'll basically start to self-amputate, and once it kind of gets that point, there's nothing we can do to fix it. So then the only option would be to amputate. But that's okay. Sea turtles can survive in the wild with only 3 flippers. One of our other turtles right now, her name is Booga, another loggerhead. We have a lot of loggerheads. Booga came in just a couple weeks after Hurricane Irma. She was also found entangled in a crab trap, but it was entangled on her rear flipper. But with the amount of damage that had caused, the flipper was basically dead. So we had to amputate the flipper. We had to remove it. So she'll just be with us for maybe another couple months. We just have to wait for the amputation site to heal, and then she'll be able to be released. She's always going to look a little bit funny, just like a three-legged dog, but that's okay. She'll still be able to do everything that a normal turtle does. She'll always just look a little bit funny. But as long as they have 3 full flippers, they are able to be released. Because they have the other 3 flippers, they can learn how to adapt. It's only when they're missing more than 1 flipper, that's when their chances of release are a lot lower. But Booga's about 120 pounds, so pretty good sized turtle, but not fully grown yet. Loggerheads will get to be about 400 pounds, so shell length of just about 4 feet long. And sea turtles are actually really cool. They never stop growing. So the older the turtle, the larger they are. And that's really the only way that you can guesstimate their age is based off of their size. Because they don't have growth rings like a tree. And their average lifespans are about 80 to 100 years. So they live for quite a long time. But the loggerheads are one of the more common species that we get here. Actually, one of the more common species in Florida. Florida is one of the top 2 nesting beaches in the world for loggerheads. So you always get a lot of these guys. And when they're here, especially when they're sick, they do get their own individual tanks. Just like when you get sick, you have to stay home from school so you don't get everybody else sick. Well, these are the sea turtle versions. So that way we can keep them by themselves, and we can adjust their water level when we need to. Sort of like our version of bed rest. So that way when they get sick, we can kind of keep them in nice shallow water. So like this one, this is Mammy Gal. She's been here about a week and a half. She's a green sea turtle. So she's different from the other guys. But even though they're called green turtles, they're not actually green. They're brown. But they get their name because they're herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here they get romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, green stuff. And they eat so much green stuff that their fat, their insides, turn green. But she came in because she has tumors. So she's got little growths all over her eyes, her neck, around her flippers. Those are tumors. They're caused by a virus called fibropapilloma, or FP for short, which is caused by water pollution. And so those tumors grow on the soft tissues, so around their necks, their flippers, their eyes, which makes it very, very hard for these turtles to see or to swim. So they have to come in and we do surgery. We remove those tumors. But she was also attacked by a shark, so she also has some scratches on the back of her shell and on her belly, but we can't see her belly at the moment. But their shell is really their main defense from a shark, because they can't pull their heads and their flippers inside their shell like a box turtle can, so their heads and their flippers are always out. So when they are getting attacked by a shark, what they'll do is they'll twist and they'll turn. They'll keep their back or their belly to the shark because it's a lot harder for the shark to bite them. Think about you trying to pinch your hand. You can pinch the side of your hand very, very easily, but you try to pinch the palm of your hand, it's a lot more difficult. Same thing with the turtles and the sharks. But she's still pretty sick. She's only been here, like I said, a week and a half. So for most of the time so far, she just kind of sleeps. And then hopefully later this week or next week, we'll be able to start doing surgery and start removing some of those tumors. So we're just kind of giving her enough kind of time to rest and heal a little bit before we start surgery. And when they are sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So a lot longer than us. But the tumors are one of the more common problems that we get down here. So like we've got Mammy Gal that has tumors, and we also have No Name. No Name has some larger tumors. And it's not that No Name doesn't have a name, it's that her name is No Name. She was found right off of No Name Key, which is one of the little islands down here. Because sometimes the turtles do have some very, very strange names, because it's typically the people that find the turtles that get to name them. So sometimes they're named after where they're found, like No Name. Mammy Gale, that was the name of the rescuer's grandmother, was her nickname. Booga was named after the boat that found her. That boat's name was Booga Man. So it keeps it kind of fun. You never know what kind of turtle or what kind of name you're going to get next. But we are kind of unique because we are located right on the ocean. It's one of the perks of living on an island. And so the water for all of our tanks can come right from the ocean, which makes it a little bit easier on the turtles. Got a little pelican on the pole there. But it also makes it easier for the boaters sometimes to rescue the turtles, because if the turtle's really close, they can just bring the turtle right here into our docks. Plus, it doesn't hurt that we have a really, really nice view every day. But then again, there's no such thing as a bad view down here. But we've got most of our turtles in their own tanks, but then we also have our big pool. Our big pool is where our permanent residents live. So the turtles that are now completely healthy, they just cannot survive on their own anymore in the wild. So they have to stay here. But we don't want to keep them in a little tiny tank forever. That's not really nice. So they get the big pool here. It's connected directly to the ocean, so it's tidal, and there's fish, all sorts of fun stuff. And some of them, we've got one, this is April, he's blind. So he just kind of does his own thing. And then most of them have what we call bubble butt syndrome. Like Coastie here, she's got bubble butt. She was found by the Coast Guard. But bubble butt is what happens when they get hit by a boat and the boat strike causes air to get trapped underneath their shell, which means then that turtle floats. And even once they heal, they still float. So you can't release a floating sea turtle, so they have to stay here. But even if they have to stay in captivity, they might eventually go to a zoo or an aquarium, because it's the only way for a zoo or an aquarium to get a sea turtle. Because they are an endangered species, you just can't go out into the ocean and take a turtle. But we currently have, I think, 14 turtles in the pool here. Looks like most of them might be hiding at the moment. But that's okay. Okay, we want to do some questions?
Sure. Thanks so much, Teresa. That was amazing. A great tour. So I'll open the floor up to questions. We'll start with Miss Erickson's class. Whenever you guys are ready, just unmute your mic. If anyone has a question, I'd love for you to come up to the computer or the mic that you're using. So go ahead, Miss Erickson.
What's your favorite out of all of the sea turtles?
My favorite? It's kind of hard to pick just one, because they're all pretty cool. It's like trying to pick your favorite type of chocolate. You just can't do it, because they each have their own little quirks that make them awesome.
Good question. So we'll move on to Mr. Vasquez's class now. If you guys want to unmute your mic, and if anyone has a question prepared, if they could come up to the front, ask it nice and clear. Mr. Vasquez's class, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are we on?
No, we're not.
I can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's ask. James, go.
No,
Go, Zaz.
Has a turtle ever tried to attack you when you were rescuing it?
Well, sea turtles, they are wild animals. So they always have the possibility of biting. So all of us here are very trained how to handle these turtles so that way we don't get bit and at the same time we don't accidentally hurt the turtle. But it does happen. But sea turtles, they're not mean. Like, they won't go out of their way to bite you. But we always have to be careful because when they get scared or when they're sick, they might lash out. The favorite thing that they do like to do, though, is kind of smack you with their flipper. So we end up with a lot more bruises from their flippers rather than bites.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for your question. Now we're going to move on to Mrs. Pandola's class. So if you guys have any questions at all, just unmute the mic. Perfect.
The turtles lose their shells sometimes when you rescue them, and can they survive without their shells?
Well, their shells are a part of them. Their shell is bone. So it'd be like you not having any bones. Like, wouldn't really work out that way. But their shells are able to heal. So like when they get hit by a boat like Jovanovic, it does heal. They'll just always have a scar. But as they get bigger, their shell gets bigger. And like Montel there, the big guy, he actually has a dent in the left side of his shell, which he now has pressed up against the fence so we can't see it. But when he was hit by a boat, he ended up with a dent. It doesn't hurt. It's completely healed. It's just always going to be slightly odd.
Great question. Thank you, Miss Pandola's class. And now we're going to go on to Miss Hohn's grade 2s from Barry. Do you guys have any questions at all? You can unmute your mic and...
You gotta go down.
Right.
Okay, let's speak loud voice.
How many kinds of turtles are there in the world?
There's only 7 types of sea turtles in the world. That's a lot less than you would think. So there's 5 species that are found around Florida. So the most common are the loggerheads and the greens. We do have one Kemp's Ridley. She's in the pool here, but she likes to hide. So we probably won't see her. And then the other 2 species around Florida are the hawksbill and the leatherback. And then also throughout the world, you have the olive ridley, which is in the Pacific Ocean, and then the Australian flatback, which is near Australia.
Cool.
Great question. And I see there's another hand. We'll come back to you guys. We're just going to go to our last classroom first, okay? So last but not least, Ms. Brecka's class. If you guys could unmute the mic if you have any questions.
Turtles have sensitive hearing or sight.
Say that one again?
Louder.
Do turtles have sensitive hearing or sight?
Well, their main sense is sight and then smell. They don't hear very well. Part of the problem is that they don't have external ears like you or I do, because they look really, really funny. Their ears are internal. So the way they're kind of designed is that those ears can pick up like very low vibrations and low frequencies a lot better. And that's one of their problems when they get hit by boats, is that they don't always hear the boat coming in time. So like me standing on top of, like outside of their tanks and talking, they don't really hear that, which is kind of nice. But sea turtles also don't communicate with each other. They don't have vocal cords, they don't make noise, and so it does kind of make sense that hearing is not one of their better senses because they don't need it. Okay, and this is Bender. She just popped up. She's our Kemp's Ridley. The Kemp's Ridleys are also known as the ghost turtles because they're white. But she's one of our permanent residents. She's missing a flipper and she's got bubble butt.
Okay, do we have time for another?
Awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, if you had another, and welcome to go ahead.
Right. How many animals per year does the turtle hospital save?
Every year we typically get in about 100 turtles. It does vary kind of year by year, but it's on average about 100. And then we also always get typically a couple hundred little hatchlings every summer, because we get the hatchlings when they don't quite make it to the ocean by themselves, once they hatch out of their nest, which I do have still just a couple hatchlings left that you'll get to see. But just like a real hospital, we never know when we're going to get a turtle call. Whether it's going to be first thing in the morning, middle of the night, we're always ready. But we've got this little guy. This is a little baby green sea turtle. So he is tiny. He's just a couple months old. He actually came in after Hurricane Irma. He kind of got washed in. But all of the other little post hatchlings that we got washed in have already been released. But this little guy ended up with, he kind of got nibbled on. He ended up with a little bit of damage to the back of his shell and his rear flippers. So we want to keep him for just a little while longer. Make sure he is completely healthy before we release him.
Awesome. Thanks for that second question. So we're going to go back to Ms. Holmes' class. If you guys have any other questions that you want to ask, go ahead and unmute your mic and ask them.
Nice and loud.
If we keep
Louder.
polluting, what will happen?
Well, eventually, like if we don't help the ocean, eventually the ocean will die. And the problem with that is that the ocean, everything is connected, even more so than land animals. And so, especially with sea turtles. So, like the leatherback sea turtles, they are critically endangered now. And so they're finding that because there's not enough leatherbacks to eat the jellyfish, that the jellyfish populations are getting out of control. And then the jellyfish eat the juvenile fish, which then affects the fishing industry for humans. So even though, like, leatherbacks don't eat fish, they're still affecting the fishing. And that's the thing with the ocean, is that everything is interconnected. So if you, like, dump something in the ocean in one area, it's not going to stay right there. And especially, like, a few years ago with the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Even though it's over, like it's no longer spewing oil, and we got most of it cleaned up, they're still trying to figure out the long-term effects of that oil spill. Because it's not completely gone from the ecosystem. They're still finding it. So that's still something that we're trying to figure out as well.
Thank you.
Awesome, great question. And Ms. Holmes' class, if you have any other stragglers, we'd love to get one. Come on, don't be shy, guys. Come up to the front. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to Ms. Pendola's class. Ms. Pendola, if you could unmute your mic if you have anyone with the burning question. Go right ahead.
What do turtles eat?
Well, that depends on their species. So, like, the green sea turtles are the ones that eat the green stuff. So they're herbivores. So they eat seagrass and algae. The loggerheads are carnivores. So they'll eat anything with a hard shell. So crab, lobster, conch, anything like that. So when they're here, they'll get a lot of squid, fish, shrimp, stuff that's a little bit easier for them to digest when they're sick.
Great question. Ms. Pendola, we have time, actually, if you have any more questions that you'd like to ask.
Do the turtles get shots?
They do. Some of the medications only come in injection form. Some do come in pill form, but it's not always easy trying to give a sea turtle a pill. We try to hide it in a piece of squid, but sometimes they'll spit it back out. Think about trying to give your dog a pill. Doesn't always work. So yeah, a lot of the medications that we give are in shots or IVs, which the turtles don't always like them either.
Great question. Thanks. So we'll move on to Mr. Vasquez's class. We had a question earlier, but if you have anything else more, you're welcome to ask it.
Okay, Dory.
What's the worst injury you've seen so far on your job?
Typically the worst injuries are the turtles that come in with multiple problems. So turtles like Jovanovic that have a boat strike and an entanglement, or a boat strike and a shark bite. So cases like that. We do have one turtle right now. His name is Kevin, which we'll go on over to Kevin. Kevin was bit by a shark, and she's missing both front flippers.
No, Kevin.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yep, this is Kevin. So she was bit by a shark. So she's missing both front flippers, because remember I told you that they can't pull their heads and their flippers inside their shell. And so all that shark got was just the two flippers, but the chances of her being released are very, very low. Because missing one flipper, they're fine, but missing two flippers, she's not going to be very fast. And she still has a bandage on the right front flipper, because that one is still healing. But once she is completely healed, we hopefully will be able to give her in the deeper area. And we might even be able to give her prosthetics. But we have to wait till she completely heals, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome, great question from Mr. Vasquez's class. Thanks, guys. And we're going to go back to Miss Erickson's class. She's the one waiting to lead. So, you guys have questions? I'm just going to write them and come to the nice and live.
Has there ever been a time that you have too many turtles in the hospital?
Well, not really. Like, we won't ever turn a turtle away. So right now we have 36 turtles, but we still have some empty tanks. So that's not a problem. The most we've ever had was back in 2010. We had 200. But that was kind of a rare case. That was when Florida got really, really cold. So even down here in the Keys, the water temperature got down into the 50s, which is just too cold for the turtles. So they got what we call cold stunned. They weren't sick, they were just cold. So we kind of put them inside in kiddie pools, kept them for like a couple weeks till the water warmed up, and then took them back out into the water and released them. So we will always find some place to put a turtle.
Wonderful, great question. Thanks, Mr. Erickson. There's someone with breakfast class. If you want to use the mic, you can go right ahead.
It is?
How do you keep track of the turtles? How do you keep track of the turtles?
When they're here or when they're released?
When they're there.
Well, when they're here, everybody gets a little name tag on their tank. And then the patients, if we ever have like two turtles that look similar, we write their name on the back of their shell. So like this guy, this is Bumpy. Because like if you go to the hospital, you get a wristband with your name and your information on it. So that way they don't mix up your medication. So when the turtles are here and they're in the hospital, we can't give them a wristband because they don't have a wrist. So instead, they get a little paint pen and their name written on their shell. And it's just to guarantee that we're going to give the correct medication to the correct turtle, and they're not going to have any problems. We're not going to mix them up.
Great, thanks for that question. That was Miss Moon's class, I believe. So, sorry, Miss Breakfast class, we're going to go back to you guys. I think there was a question, gentleman in a red shirt. Yeah, there he is. So I'm just going to unmute your mic. You have to go right away.
Eggs are laid a year.
Say that a little bit louder.
How many turtle eggs are laid a year?
Well, each nest has about 100 eggs, and a single female will nest between 4 to 7 times in one season, and then she'll take 2 to 3 years off. But nesting season, at least in Florida, is May through October. So it's done with for now. But come May, they'll start laying eggs again. And they will actually return to the same beach that they were hatched from to lay their own eggs.
All right. And we have one more question. Scooch
Sure.
over.
How long can turtles live with bubble butt?
How long can they live with what?
Yes.
With bubble butt.
Well, their average lifespan's about 80 to 100 years. So they live a pretty long time. And even like for our permanent residents, so the turtles in the big pool that can never be released, we're not even sure if some of these turtles will eventually live a little bit longer. Because a lot of times animals in captivity will sometimes live longer because here they're a little bit healthier. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. But our oldest turtle is this one. This is Bowie. She's about 300 pounds. So she's probably around 50 years old. Because green sea turtles will get to be about 500 pounds. They get a little bit bigger than the loggerheads.
Awesome. Great breakfast class. Thanks very much, guys. So if anyone else has any last questions, I'll get you just to put up your hand right at the front of the class. Yeah, do I see Miss Erickson's class? Is that one more question? Go right ahead, Miss Erickson's class.
How many sea turtles do you get in about a year?
Every year we typically get about 100. Currently we have 36.
Great question. Thanks, guys. And I see that Ms. Hohn's class has a question. So I've unmuted your mic there, and if you want to ask ahead any questions.
Why do turtles lay eggs on sand?
Well, because sea turtles, they breathe air. And so they have lungs instead of gills, which means that the eggs need air. So they can't lay their eggs in the water, because then the babies would drown and there'd be no more sea turtles. That wouldn't work out very well. And then the closest land to the ocean is the beach. Because they're not going to crawl any farther out of the water than they really have to. Because they like being in the water, because in the water, they're weightless. And something you guys probably don't see very often. They have a little iguana friend. Because down here, we have wild iguanas. Whereas most places have squirrels, we have iguanas instead. So they just kind of like to come in and check everything out.
Wow, what a treat. We've already gotten a pelican and an iguana. Lots of visitors.
It's Florida. Everything grows down here.
Yeah, I think we have another question from Mr. Vasquez's class. I'm going to unmute the mic there, guys. And whenever you're ready, you can ask a question.
You're on.
Okay. What's the longest period of time that a turtle has been in the hospital?
Well, patient-wise, it kind of depends on what's wrong with the turtle as to how long they need to stay. So sometimes they're here for just a couple months. Sometimes they're here for closer to a year. It depends on the turtle. But some of our permanent residents have been here for a long time. So April, the blind one, big guy there, April's been here since April 1st, 1991. But our longest turtle is Mr. Bubblebutt. He's somewhere in this pool, but I have not seen him yet. He must be sleeping. He's been here since 1989.
Wow. That's a long time.
That is a really long time.
Yeah, he's been here longer than most of you guys have been alive.
Definitely. Thank you.
No, I've been
Interesting.
alive. I've been alive long.
Mr. Vasquez.
No, I've been alive long.
Thank you very much.
And so we have another class from Ms. Brecka's class, actually. Another question, rather. Go ahead, guys.
What color is the turtle's iris?
Most of the time, they're kind of brownish. Sometimes they'll look a little bit more like amber-ish, maybe kind of yellowish. And sometimes they'll be like a very dark brown. But most of the time, they're brown.
Thank you.
Great question.
What is the
So I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, guys. But
Hey.
we're going to ask all the classrooms to get up and make lots of noise whenever they're ready.
Okay,
Thank
ready?
you.
Go.
Amazing. I had to mute you guys, otherwise it wouldn't have stopped. So thanks so much for Teresa for coming in and teaching us all about sea turtles from the Turtle Hospital in the Florida Keys. As always, for teachers and future classrooms or anyone else watching, you can go to exploringbytheseniorparents.com for upcoming events. Thanks so much for the classroom for participating, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Teresa.
You're welcome. We like being able to teach people about turtles.
Yeah. I'm very jealous of your warm weather at this time of year.
Most people are.
I'll be actually in the Bahamas in a week or so, off of Cape Eleuthera, so be close to you guys.
Okay. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day and have fun in the Bahamas.
Take care. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.